Hi, it's B. I just wanted to touch base on the situation that some people are facing with regard to our leaders attempting to bring in policies around certain sections of our workforce, in particular those who professionally look after other people, look after vulnerable people in the main. So I know that this is of concern to very, very many people who are in this sector, and I wanted to just address some pointers really that you might be able to use if this situation becomes live and real for you and you are face to face with your boss or your human resources department trying to negotiate your way through this, and your private decision is that you don't want this particular treatment. So I've thought of 4 points that you can bring up. You may be able to think of more, and that's fine. But my four, I'm going to start with the first one. The first one is proof of claim. And what you're looking for with proof of claim is that since your boss or your employer is requiring this thing from you, this thing from you, you are looking for proof of claim. You are looking for them to prove to you, using independent, documented scientific evidence, that the thing that they want to protect you from, actually exists and has been isolated and purified in an asymptomatic individual with no underlying comorbidities, and that it fulfills all of Koch's postulates, because that will mean that this thing is actually live. And so far, and throughout all my research, I've not actually been able to have that answer given to me specifically by our leaders. And I have asked them, or I have written to them. That is my first point. Insist on proof of claim. Insist that your employer proves his claim to you, proves to you that he can authorize this because we have evidence of the existence of the thing which he wishes to protect you from. So that is known as a proof of claim. So that's the first point that I'd like to bring up. The second point, excuse me, I'll get my notes, is proof of indemnity. So the point being here is that since our leaders have decided to waive liability, responsibility for any harm, loss, or injury caused as a result of giving a person this medical treatment, and since the government's own compensation is very, very difficult to get, and the process of navigating through to getting any compensation is well, it's a nightmare, and you've already got serious symptoms, and the amount you get at the end is really quite paltry, particularly if you are seriously injured and you're facing a lifetime of disability. The amount that the government is willing to spend on you is paltry, let's face it. What you're going to ask is, since this liability has been waived to those that are manufacturing this product, what steps have your employers taken to shore up their liability? Can they show you proof of indemnity? Can they show you that they have an insurance policy that will protect you should there be any harm, loss, or injury caused by this treatment? And when I'm talking about proof of indemnity, I've read all sorts of things, like they're thinking that we'll give you a few more days off work if you're sick, if you go down with a headache or a sore arm or something like that. We'll even pay your taxi fare or give you a day off to get to the centre where you're going to have this. Well, frankly, that's not good enough. Your employer is asking you to do something that is against your conscience. That is something that you do not wish to do, you do not wish to consent to, which is unproven and untested at the present time, and they're offering a taxi to the centre or a few days extra off work. No, I would be asking for at least £1,000 per day for any minor injury caused as a result of their requirement for you to have this treatment. And that's not saying you're going to have the treatment. You just want to make sure the insurance policy is in place so that if you do get a headache or a sore arm or a swelling or whatever, and they're trying to say to you, oh, that's proof that this thing is working, when the reality is it's proof that your own immune system is fighting against it tooth and nail, then they are actually going to compensate you for your pain, for your misery, for being sick, to the tune of at least £1,000 a day, I would say, for the duration of those symptoms. And if there are more serious symptoms which have been reported, loss of sight, thrombosis, all kinds of things, what is their plan for you then? What compensation does their insurance offer you? Have they in fact got any insurance? And then if the worst things comes to the worst and there is a real significant harm, loss or injury to you as a result of their requirement, we always have to remember that this is their requirement, it's not something you're willing to do. Then what is the situation then? What kind of compensation can you expect, and under what terms, and how hard do you have to fight for it? So I'm suggesting that people ask for at least £1 million in the case of moderate to severe injuries. And this may seem unreasonable to people, and you'll probably be told it by your employer that that's unreasonable. But my question would be, how reasonable is it that you believe that just because I spend 8 or 10 hours a day working here, you have the right to my medical autonomy now? Is that not unreasonable? That you're deciding that you can make my decisions for me when I don't happen to follow the leadership agenda? I would push on that one. I mean, I am willing to put money on the fact that because this thing is still under clinical trials, nobody is able to get insurance at all, because who knows what the end result is going to be until we have the long-term data. And even then, I think the underwriters will be pushing for not much in the way of insurance. So that's the second point: proof of liability, proof of indemnity. And then my third point is asking the question, how will taking this experimental medical treatment actually benefit me and the people that I look after? And the reason you want to ask this is because the manufacturers have quite clearly and quite explicitly stated that their product does not reduce or stop transmission. So if it doesn't do that, why are you having it? You can't stop transmission. You can't stop passing it to somebody else. If they've had it, they can still pass it to you. And also they state that it can only benefit those with mild to moderate symptoms. Well, surely your immune system can do that anyway. What exactly is the benefit to you? And can they provide independent documented scientific evidence to support those benefits? Now, I was watching, this is just an aside point, I was watching a video of two women chatting on one of these NHS promotion videos. And they were discussing the fact that the manufacturers do state that the product cannot stop transmission, but they were actually saying that doesn't matter because it will save your life. Is this thing not under clinical trials? How do we know at this stage, without the long-term data, that this thing will save your life? And what is it saving your life from if we can't actually even get evidence that the thing it's supposed to be saving your life from doesn't actually exist? It's all a bit blurry, isn't it? So I would suggest that anybody who is saying to you that it will save your life is actually, well, it's just conjecture really, isn't it? They can't actually specifically state it will save your life as a fact. They can only state it as conjecture. And frankly, that wouldn't stand up in law as far as I'm concerned. So that's the third point, asking them how this thing will benefit you and the people you care for. So my fourth point, my final point on this, is the fact that this experimental medical treatment is still under clinical trial until at least the end of 2022. So given we are, the United Kingdom, this country is signed up to the UNESCO Charter and the Nuremberg Code, which both specifically state that we each have the right to decline an experimental medical treatment without disadvantage. I would suggest asking your employers how their policy marries up with the UNESCO and Charter and the Nuremberg Code, since surely the threat of losing your job, or even actually losing your job, would be putting you at a disadvantage. So how do the two marry up in law? How do the two marry up in principle? How is that ethical when the United Kingdom has signed up to these charters and to this code? So that is my fourth and final point on this. And just a couple of aside points. If you do find yourself in this situation, the first thing I would suggest is that you refrain from defending your position. You have no reason to give yourself away. Your reasons for declining this treatment at the present time are private and can remain private, no matter whether your employer suggests you see a counsellor or suggests you see a hospital doctor or your own GP or an doctor employed by your business. This remains your business, your private business. So you do not have to give your reasons. It seems to me that any reasons given will be noted and put in the database anyway for further reference, because the powers that be are collating all this stuff, in my opinion. And the second reason for not giving your details away or your reasons away would be that you want to put your employer fairly and squarely in the point of justifying themselves for wanting to have this kind of policy in their workplace. They are the requirers. They need to make proof of claim. They need to show you and justify their reasons to you. It is not for you, the private individual who's made a private decision and has medical autonomy, to actually give yourself away and to give your reasons if you don't want to. So I would strongly recommend that you keep quite silent on that and say, this is my private medical decision and it's as it stands at the present moment, having done my own research. Or something along those lines. There's no need in any of these situations to get defensive. It's always about use of questions and conversation in a way that puts the onus on the person requiring actually justifying themselves. What they try to do is to turn that round and make you justify your position. That's not necessary. And my other point, which I think is also very, very important, it's really not easy to do, but I do recommend it strongly, is if you are called into a meeting, an informal meeting or a formal meeting, insist on either having a scribe or taking your own notes. And this is because should things go further to another stage, to tribunal, or further down the line, there should be some kind of exercise in which they're looking to lose some employees and you're top of the list. You then have a record of what happened, and if you feel you're being unfairly let go of, or it might be as a result of what's happened a few months further back or a year further back, then your notes will be of a real value to you as you go forward to tribunal. Now, I say this is not easy to do. I have actually worked in this department and I have actually seen these things, and it is really irritating for the people conducting the interview when you slow it down to actually handwrite your own notes and you take your time. And I do recommend you do that. You take your time and write down everything that's said, or particularly if you can't have a scribe, and usually in these situations they will say to you that it's all right, one of us will take notes. That's not good enough. You need your own notes written by you in your own hand or by a scribe who has come in to support you. So I very, very, very strongly recommend that in these circumstances you do this, and that you sit with your employees' discomfort as you take your time to write down these notes, because they like them to be short, quick, and over with. They don't like all this unnecessary hanging around while you write everything down. And it also makes them feel very, very uncomfortable when you start writing notes. So there you go. That's just a little bit from me on the situation that is facing certain people in certain sectors of employment. I hope it helps. I have forgotten to add my caveat, which I usually add at the beginning, which is that I'm not a lawyer and I'm not trained in law. I'm just an advocate and here to support people as this situation unfolds and unravels in front of us. So it just leaves me to say Godspeed and wish you every success in your journey. And until next time.